Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, May the 20th. I can't believe we're already over halfway through May. I am Jen Bordeaux, the Director of Public Relations of New Direction Family Law, coming at you with another segment of Family Law Uncorked. And today I am joined by one of the partners and attorneys at New Direction Family Law, Ms. Sarah Hink.
Good morning, everybody. I'm back in the office here for the day.
Yeah, we've been kind of doing a block schedule with staff, just kind of trying to establish a little bit of what felt normal prior to all of this. I was in there the first half of the week and felt pretty good to be back. So today we wanted to talk about preparing. If you are considering a separation, divorce, things you can do to be preparing. There's been all kinds of jokes and speculation that when we start to come out of our homes after all of this, there's going to be a baby boom and potentially a divorce boom. So right now, as you've been spending more time at home, maybe prior to quarantine, you were considering a separation. And so now maybe that's only solidified that decision that you were contemplating. But it can really be beneficial to know what to do to prepare if you are thinking about that, things to consider as you're going through that thought process, or documents to gather, things like that. So wanted to bring in Sarah, and we have some information on our website regarding this too, but just wanted to touch base on things to think about and what to do if you are considering that to help with this process, because there's a lot of decisions that go into it. Once that decision is made, there's a lot that follows that. So whatever you can do to prepare will only help that decision. So what can people do while they're sitting at home thinking about this?
Well, I think you're right that some people probably already had it on their agenda to maybe when the school year was over, initiate the separation process. And here we are. I think the school calendar got extended when it went virtual. And so that's made things difficult, and everyone's timeline has kind of moved that was already preparing or planning on leaving. Maybe you've been at home with your spouse and you haven't been able to reach out to an attorney. You don't have a good time or space away from your spouse to have a consultation virtually with an attorney. So there have been a lot of roadblocks for people looking to separate during this. And then also, where do you go to separate? You have to move out, and this is not necessarily the best time, or hasn't been the best time to do so, but we're kind of getting to the point, I think, where people are going to feel comfortable maybe renting an apartment, buying a house, and starting that separation process, at least physically. So while we're still considering that you might be hunkering down with your spouse currently, that you've decided that you do want to separate, what can you be doing during this time period while you're waiting for the time to be right for you to move out? One thing you can definitely do is get to know your finances. Like maybe during this time you haven't been particularly the one that's been on top of paying the bills. You don't really know what your spouse has as far as retirement benefits, or if there's bank accounts out there that you are pretty sure exist, but you don't know what's actually going on with them. Take this as a time to, I don't want to say like necessarily snoop around your husband or your spouse and figure out what's out there, but technically it's still your property. You're still together. Ask them, just be like, I wanted to take a day to look at our finances. What accounts do we have? What's been going on with them lately? And use this as a learning time for you to get to know your marital estate, and also what debts might be out there as well. Another thing you can do is start to budget for the future and think about what that might look like for you when you do separate. Are you going to be the spouse that moves out? Are you going to have a new, mortgage or a new rent payment that's going to be different from what you're used to paying? Look at what you might not have as far as income. And does your spouse have enough income to support you financially? Is there going to be spousal support involved? Or are you financially independent on your own, and you can budget and plan for your own rent and your groceries and what you might need to move forward? What does that look like? And really crunch those numbers. And that'd be the best opportunity to do so while you have time at home to do that. Also, if you're considering separation and you have just started that process, at least verbally with your spouse, look into marriage counseling if you're not quite there yet, if you don't know what to do. I know a lot of counselors are out there offering virtual online sessions and are probably available to do marriage counseling right now through a Zoom platform or something like that. That's really good idea to go ahead and start that process and get that out of the way, because some people it helps, some people they realize as soon as they start marriage counseling that it's not going to help, that you've already passed that stage. So instead of just sitting around waiting for things to happen, take the initiative and get started on a lot of this process.
Yeah, definitely. And to that end too, I mean, I've spoken to a lot just through different Facebook Lives or virtual networking events, spoken to several therapists, and telehealth is a big thing right now. It was kind of starting to trend a little bit before this, and then like every other business in the world had to try to find some, using Zoom or WebEx or whatever it is to continue on virtual services. They're wondering how that shift is going to be after this, largely in part because of insurance, and if insurance will continue to cover it after things start to open back up a bit. But another resource, and because I know a lot of people who, whether you're whichever spouse you are, like if you're the initiating or whatever the case may be, having that conversation with your spouse if you haven't been able to talk about it or you don't feel like it's a safe space. And so that's another avenue that a therapist can be a good resource for, is to help you figure out how to approach that subject
Right.
with your spouse as well, and work through all of the emotional turmoil, because that can be extremely stressful. I mean, it's a big life-changing decision, and it's not an easy one. While it may be very valid and necessary, that doesn't really make it any easier. So
Yeah. And of course, if there's domestic violence in your relationship, know that there are sources out there for you, that you do not have to stay home with that person. Interact is available to people right now if they need to reach out to them. They will help you get out of that situation. They will move you to a safe place. Of course, attorneys all over our area are available to you to reach out to if there's domestic violence. So it's one thing I do want to let people know, that if you're in an unsafe environment, that there is help, and don't feel like you have to stay there during this time.
Yeah, and I like what you said about looking at finances, because we've seen it so many times that one spouse may not be involved in finances at all. And then all of a sudden, well, how do I make that not obvious? And so I like what you said about, like, right now looking at your budget. And we did another family law in court with a divorce financial coach, and she talks about budgeting tips during quarantine. And that was one of the first things she said was, take a look at your finances. Right now, it is so important that you know exactly what's going in and out, what can be cut, what's not necessary. So it's a great excuse, so to speak, but it's not an excuse, it's necessary.
Yeah.
To initiate that, of if you haven't been involved in finances, really to open that conversation, to really get involved and take a look at what all is there. So
And I would say too, on a different platform of this, is if you think there was an affair or some other relationship before all this started, I'm certain that it'd be easy to catch them, texting, emailing during this time period that you're not supposed to be leaving the house, because if you know that your spouse is working from home, if they keep going to the office, that doesn't make sense. I mean, just take note of those kind of acts too during this time. And I think we can expect for a lot of cheaters to get caught during this. I wouldn't be surprised to hear about that more coming up soon.
Yeah, and substance abuse. That's something else we've touched on one of these Facebook, the family law in courts, is that it's going to be harder and harder for people that were, abusing alcohol or any sort of other substance, but still going to work or being able to be out of the house. It's going to be much harder to hide that behavior. So, two sides to that of, if it's identifiable, then hopefully, the person, you can help the person seek help. But if it's also something that you recognize as a spouse that, you're worried about the safety of your children, or, the status of your marriage, then and you recognize that also something that, can be discussed, during a consultation and with one of the attorneys about how that affects the situation.
Yeah.
Bringing up kids, what is something, or what do people need to be thinking about in terms of, kids and child custody if they're thinking about separating?
Well, we have all types of relationships, and some people might fight over money, but custody is easy. They're like, okay, well, we're both good parents. We both know that we want to do 50-50. That's an easy part. Other people might say, no, we can't do 50-50. Our relationship is bad. I can't co-parent with this person. So it kind of depends on your relationship and what you're able to do as co-parents with your spouse. But if you're discussing these issues together, if your spouse knows that you want to separate, then take this time to sit together and say, okay, well, what is the custody schedule going to look like? What can we do realistically? If someone's going to move out of the county or far away, it's not going to be realistic to do 50-50. What does that schedule look like? Start discussing things and making sure that while you can't get along together, you can at least have conversations about the kids that are not involved with your emotions, any anger towards each other, and see if you are able to do that, because it'll save you a headache, it'll save you money on attorney's fees if you just go ahead and start the process and separate co-parenting from maybe the finances and any emotional aspect of this. And I know that there's going to be some issues with school. I think they're still trying to figure out what next year is going to look like as far as school schedules. Some schools are going to start early, I think. Some are going to start late. I have really no idea. I don't think anyone really knows right now. But just prepare to be flexible. With our current clients and people who have custody arrangements already, it might not look the same as what you plan to prepare when you did your settlement, your separation agreement, or your custody order. So it's really, when it comes to the kids, it's about being flexible with each other and being patient with each other.
Yeah, definitely. And we are doing another, got these family law courts lined up. And so next week, we're going to be doing one about what to expect during initial consultation, because initially reaching out can just be so overwhelming and you don't know what to expect. And it can just be intimidating to sit down, with an attorney, because a lot of times it's the first time that you're admitting out loud that this is what's going on. So what does this, if you're sitting at home, you're thinking about these things, and so you start to prepare, gather these documents, look at finances, start to look at, where you might move out to, or if you want, what does the new living situation look like? Do you want the other spouse to move out? Things like that. And doing all of that prep ahead of time, how does that help with or play into the initial consultation?
You're getting organized first and foremost, and that's always good, because there's going to be a financial aspect to some degree in your separation process. It's also a good idea to go ahead and research attorneys in your area. If you have a friend or family member that went through a divorce, ask them about their experience with an attorney and see if they have recommendations. Obviously, I would recommend that I always tell everyone, even if they meet with me in a consultation, make sure you find an attorney that you like, that you are comfortable working with. It's a very personal situation that you're having to deal with legally. So not only do they need to be confident in the legal arena, of course, but can understand you, can validate your emotions, but also counsel you and help you control those emotions when you go through this process. Because our job is not just to say, okay, you want this, well, I'm just going to, regurgitate that to the next person and see if that accomplishes what you want. That's not what this is about. So research, join online support groups if you feel like that will be helpful to you, but also caution on what you put out there. Just remember that anything that you put in writing can come back to bite you in your butt later in court, especially. So just don't put anything too personal in any kind of online forums. I don't really care who you trust. You just never know. But it can still be helpful to reach out to a local community webpage on Facebook or something like that, and just see what people have to say about attorneys they've used before. Look at client reviews online and gather some kind of basic knowledge about North Carolina. If you're in North Carolina, the laws here and what to expect. I know on our webpage, there's a ton of articles, a ton of information that was written by us specifically to be easy to understand and to have a ground level knowledge of what to expect in the separation process. Because when you come to a consultation, you're going to hear us discuss those issues, child support and equitable distribution, and to already have some kind of background into what that means is going to help you understand what we're saying and really take more from that consultation. So just get some kind of basic understanding. If you go to Google, you might get some random articles that aren't exactly correct, but that's okay. Just come in with an open mind, and we'll counsel you on what's best in your situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good reminder that states vary as far as family law is concerned. We are only licensed to practice in North Carolina law, but as you're doing the research, which is so necessary, but as far as whatever attorney you're going to be working with and stuff like that, you might stumble across an article, like you said, that might pertain to a different state, or might just, excuse me, be talking about family law in general. And so there's specific North Carolina law, and in addition to that, every county has its own set of family court rules. So that just kind of goes back into whenever you're doing research for an attorney is, there's several things to consider, and we have a YouTube or video about that as well. But one of the things that we always say too is that whether it's us or another family law attorney, just make sure that it's an attorney that primarily, if not exclusively, practices family law, and practices in the county that you're working in, because it definitely can make a difference. So
yeah, highly recommend the attorneys that only practice family law, because it's all different. And I've handled some minor criminal cases, but kind of keep those worlds separate, because really with family law, you have to devote a lot of time to your cases, a lot of time to your clients, and other areas of law just do not lend themselves well to doing that in these sort of cases. So that's very important and helpful, because obviously I would understand the procedures in family court, but another attorney that doesn't practice family law would not understand those typical procedures that are in our domestic local rules. So very important.
Yeah, and just one county over. I mean, I know there are several differentiating factors between Wake County and Johnston County Court. I mean, just the culture of the court, the procedures, a lot of different things. So it can definitely.
Yeah. Whenever I go to a county for the first time, I always, have to suck up to all the clerks and, act a little dumb and say, "Can you help me?" And that does go a long way, and they appreciate it, because it's all different. And honestly, until you practice in that county, especially the smaller counties, you're not going to know their ways. And each judge might do things differently, and you don't want to piss anyone off. So
yeah, for sure.
Always navigate those small courts and small counties as patiently as you can, and thank everybody that helps you along the way.
100%. So just as a quick recap, because we've touched on a few things today in helping you prepare, definitely taking a hard, in-depth look at your finances, and that doesn't just mean your bank statements. That means, any retirement accounts that you or your spouse have, being able to identify where you can get, a tax return, pay stubs, assets and debts. So credit card statements as well as bank statements. So taking a hard look at your finances, what's going on currently, and what future living expenses could be in two separate households. So definitely finances. Do your research as far as when you're looking for an attorney, looking at counselors to help you navigate whether you want to seek marriage counseling or individual counseling to help you, navigate the process. And looking at if there are children involved, looking at what two separate households may be. And like you said, everybody's situation is different as to how amicable the spouses are. If you haven't brought this issue up to your spouse yet, then maybe just kind of thinking, where do the kids go to school, and what are their ages, and where are their doctors established, and things like that. So just things to start thinking about. Online resources is great. That's great grammar. Are great. There's a lot of articles on our website, just as well as general information throughout the website as well. So please feel free to check that out. And I'll help her.
Don't be afraid to be a little sleuthy. Be your own detective. Just get in there and keep your eyes open to what your spouse has been doing. If you think that there's something else going on, or hidden accounts when you talk about those finances, and you're always going to be your biggest advocate. So play a detective while you got the time, and you're both home a lot more, and try to figure out what's been going on.
Yeah, definitely. So it can be a lot, but you are not alone, and you have to make a decision that is best for you and your family. There is no perfect decision out there ever to exist in any situation. But everyone's individual happiness and mental health and everything is very, very important. So you got to do what you got to do to protect that and do what's best for you and your family. So just some things to consider and to think about, because it is a big decision to make. So you don't want to make it lightly. So few things to consider if you're preparing or thinking, contemplating initiating separation or divorce. And we'll have more family law uncorks coming up about varying topics. So Sarah, thank you for joining me this morning, and good to see you in the office.
Yep.
And we will see everybody next time.
Thank you. Have a good day.